Right now, you look at the stock market and think oil has lost. NVIDIA, Apple, and Microsoft are each worth over $3 trillion. Artificial intelligence is the new king. The future belongs to chips, not gasoline. But this is a deadly illusion. Stock market numbers are what people believe in. But there is an industry that controls what the world literally cannot survive without. While you refresh your feed on your iPhone, there is a giant quietly making more pure profit than McDonald's, Coca-Cola, and Disney combined. This is Saudi Aramco. And while investors worship AI, real power still belongs to those who pump the black liquid. Why? Because if Apple disappeared tomorrow, you'd be bored. But if oil disappeared tomorrow, your life would collapse within 48 hours. Global logistics would crash. Trucks and cargo ships would stop. Supermarket shelves would go empty. Hospitals would become morgues because backup generators would fail and sterile plastic would run out. No internet, no heating, no police. This isn't a climate crisis. This is a civilizational stroke. Welcome to reality. This is the story of who truly holds the world by the throat. Let's talk about money. Real money. Today, the Forbes list is topped by Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos with around $200 billion. Impressive? Not really. This is paper wealth. There was a man in history whose wealth was carved in stone, John D. Rockefeller. If we calculate his fortune in today's money, accounting for inflation and his share of the economy, we get a number near $400 billion. At his peak, this one man controlled 1.5% of the entire U.S. economy. But here is the interesting part. Rockefeller didn't invent oil. He didn't even drill the first well. He did something more important. He invented the modern monopoly, Standard Oil. Rockefeller understood a simple truth. It doesn't matter who drills the oil. It matters who controls the pipeline and the refinery. It's called vertical integration. He bought everything, the barrels, the trains, the factories. By the time the U.S. government forced his empire to break up in 1911, he had already won. The shards of his empire became ExxonMobil and Chevron, and he only got richer. Rockefeller's legacy didn't die, it just moved globally. And this leads us to the biggest heist in history. Almost 100 years ago, American geologists went to the king of Saudi Arabia. Back then, it was a poor land of sand and nomads. The Americans offered a deal. We give you technology and gold right now, and we take the rights to the oil. When they found the Ghawar field, which is huge, stretching the distance from New York to Washington, the deal turned out to be robbery. The Saudis received pennies. American corporations took everything. This scheme worked globally in Venezuela, Iraq, Iran, Indonesia. It was called the Seven Sisters. 7 Western companies carved up the world like a pie. They decided how much oil to pump and what the price would be. Local rulers got crumbs. Corporations built skyscrapers in New York. But every party has to end, and the hangover began in 1973. Exporting countries led by the Saudis realized, the West cannot survive without our commodity. Why are we giving it away for free? They created OPEC and turned off the tap. Gas prices in the U.S. quadrupled. Factories stopped. America realized its tanks, its fleet, and its economy were useless without fuel from the desert. That's when the modern world was defined. The U.S. offered the Saudis military protection, and in exchange, the Saudis agreed to sell oil exclusively in U.S. dollars. Thus, the petrodollar was born. Now you might say, but that's history. The U.S. is now the biggest oil producer thanks to fracking. We are independent. And this is where we need to talk about chemistry. Because most people don't understand that oil is not just oil. It has different blood types. There is light sweet oil. This is what the U.S. produces in Texas. It is great for making gasoline. But there is also heavy sour oil. This is thick, dirty sludge with lots of sulfur. Here is the trap. U.S. refineries were built decades ago to process heavy oil, which usually comes from Venezuela, Canada, or the Middle East. You cannot just switch them to light oil overnight. It's like trying to put diesel in a Ferrari. So the U.S. pumps record amounts of light oil and exports it, but it still has to import millions of barrels of heavy oil to keep its refineries running and to produce diesel, jet fuel, and asphalt. This creates a geopolitical nightmare. Traditionally, the U.S. bought heavy oil from Venezuela, but then politics happened. The U.S. sanctioned Venezuela. So they needed a replacement. They turned to Russia, which sells a similar heavy grade called Urals. For years, the U.S. bought Russian oil to replace Venezuelan oil. But then came 2022. Sanctions again. Now the West tries to block Russian oil. But remember the chemistry? Refineries still need that heavy crude. The market doesn't care about politics. It cares about physics. This brings us to the shadow fleet. Politicians say, "We stopped buying bloody oil." This is a lie. The oil keeps flowing. It just takes a longer route. Hundreds of old rusty tankers, ships that should have been scrapped years ago, are bought by anonymous shell companies. They turn off their GPS transponders in the middle of the ocean. This is called going dark. They use a technique called spoofing. A ship's signal says it's off the coast of Japan, but satellite images show the ocean is empty there. In reality, the ship is thousands of miles away, loading oil at a sanctioned port. Then they do ship-to-ship transfers. One tanker meets another in international waters, off the coast of Greece or West Africa or Malaysia. They pump the oil from one ship to another, mixing it. Now, nobody can prove where it came from. It's a global laundry service for energy. And here is the biggest loophole: India. Since sanctions began, India has become one of the biggest buyers of Russian oil. They buy it cheap, load it into their massive refineries, like the Jamnagar complex, the biggest in the world, and refine it into diesel and jet fuel. Then they sell that diesel to Europe. And legally, this is now Indian diesel. Europe feels good about its morals, but it is still running on the same oil, just paying a middleman markup. The molecule doesn't care about the flag on the passport. But oil isn't just about economics, it is the blood of war. During World War I, a French senator famously said, "Oil is the blood of the earth, and it brought us victory." France entered that war on horses and ended it with trucks and tanks. Look at World War II. Why did Hitler lose? Because Germany had no oil. The Blitzkrieg strategy was designed to win fast because they couldn't afford a long war. When the invasion of Russia stalled, Hitler had a choice: attack Moscow or turn south to the oil fields of Baku and Grozny. He chose the oil, and he still failed. Why did Japan attack Pearl Harbor? Because the U.S. imposed an oil embargo. Japan had stocks for only 1 year. They had to attack the Dutch East Indies, modern-day Indonesia, to seize their oil fields. They were fighting for fuel to keep fighting. Even the Soviet Union, in the darkest days of 1941, was sending oil to Nazi Germany right up until the day of the invasion, hoping to delay the war. Today, nothing has changed. A modern fighter jet burns more fuel in an hour than you use in your car in years. An armored division stops dead without a fuel supply chain. There is no electric tank that can charge in the middle of a battlefield. Oil is still the ultimate strategic weapon. But what about the future? What about the green transition? Here is the irony. To get off oil, we need to burn more oil. To build a wind turbine, you need steel and cement. Making cement requires immense heat, usually from coal or gas. The blades are made of fiberglass and resin, petroleum products. To build an electric car, you need copper and lithium. These are mined in massive open pits by excavators that burn thousands of liters of diesel every single day. And half the oil barrel doesn't even go into fuel. It goes into things you can't replace with a battery. Your clothes. Polyester is oil. Your house. Insulation, paint, pipes, oil, medicine, aspirin, sterile gloves, heart valves, oil, and most importantly, food. The Haber-Bosch process uses natural gas to create nitrogen fertilizer. Without synthetic fertilizer, we can only grow enough food for 4 billion people. There are 8 billion of us. That means half the people on Earth are alive today because of fossil fuels. Giving up oil and gas overnight isn't an energy transition. It's a death sentence for 4 billion people. So is oil a curse or a gift? Economists call it the resource curse. Look at Venezuela. It has the largest oil reserves in the world, more than Saudi Arabia. Yet the country is poor. Why? Because easy money kills the incentive to work. Why build factories or tech companies when you can just pump money from the ground? When the price drops, the country collapses. But then look at Norway, a small, cold country. They found oil, but they didn't let it corrupt them. They created a sovereign wealth fund. They took the oil profits and invested them in stocks worldwide: Apple, Microsoft, Nestle. Today, that fund owns 1.5% of all listed shares in the world. They used oil to buy a future without oil. Rockefeller was right about one thing: money loves silence and control. Oil is just a tool, like a hammer. You can use it to build a house, or you can use it to break a skull. We are still living in the age of oil, and until we find a physical replacement with the same energy density, something that can fly a plane across the ocean or feed 8 billion people, the world will be ruled not by the programmers in Silicon Valley, but by those who control the energy that keeps their servers running. What do you think? Will we ever truly break our addiction? Or are we tied to the black gold forever? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to understand how the world actually works. Garry was right. Here we explore how the world works and the key events that shape our reality. Subscribe so you don't miss videos that not only inspire, but also help you think bigger and act smarter.